My grandpa left me his house and a secret I wasn't meant to find. When my grandfather died, the world barely blinked. There was no obituary in the paper, no family gathering, no weeping relatives exchanging stories over casseroles. Just a phone call from a small-town lawyer with a thin, papery voice and a surname I didn't recognize. But I wasn't surprised. My grandfather, Elias Thorne, had been little more than a shadow in our lives for the past 20 years. He'd cut off contact with my mother sometime around my 10th birthday, an act she never explained and never forgave. From then on, his name became more curse than person, reserved for moments of frustration or cautionary tales. "You're acting just like him," she used to mutter when I got quiet or disappeared into my books for hours. I only saw him 3 times that I remember. All of them at his creaky farmhouse nestled in the woods of rural Maine. Each visit was brief and awkward, as if he'd invited us out of obligation rather than affection. The place always smelled like wet pennies and rotting leaves. The iron tang clung to your nostrils long after you'd left. The walls were lined with books in languages I couldn't read and clocks that ticked out of sync. And then there were the floors. God, those floors. They didn't just creak, they groaned, like old bones grinding in their sockets, like the house itself was warning us to leave. But the worst part was him. Elias had eyes like frozen lake water, clear, cold, and impossibly deep. He didn't speak much. When he did, it was in short, fragmented observations that made you feel like you'd missed a much longer conversation. Being around him was like walking into a room where someone had just been talking about you. Still, when the lawyer told me the house was mine, I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. I was broke, credit cards maxed, student loans in default, my bank account hovering at a terrifying $23.17. My apartment in Boston had mold creeping up the bathroom walls, a radiator that hissed like it hated me, and a landlord who once threatened to call the cops just for fun. On top of all that, Maddie had dumped me 2 weeks prior with a post-it note on the fridge that read, "It's not you, it's this version of you." So, yeah, free housing in the middle of nowhere sounded like a goddamn miracle. I packed everything I owned into a duffel bag and an old hiking backpack. A single trip. That was all it took to move my entire life. As the bus lurched away from the city and into the green desolation of Maine's interior, I stared out the window, watching as the skyline gave way to endless forest. Somewhere along the way, cell service died and silence took its place. It was raining when I arrived. Not a downpour, just a steady, needling drizzle that made everything look like it was melting. I stepped off the bus and immediately regretted wearing canvas sneakers. The ground sucked at them with every step, turning dirt roads into quicksand. The driver didn't wait. With a mechanical hiss, the door closed behind me and the bus vanished down the road like a ghost in the fog. And then it was just me. And the house. It stood exactly as I remembered, tall, narrow, and gray as ash. The gabled roof sagged like it had been tired for decades. The chimney leaned slightly to one side as if listening. A single bulb burned in the window above the front door, swaying gently in the draft like someone was still home. I hesitated at the gate. Something about the place pressed against my chest. Not fear, exactly, more like anticipation. Like I'd reached the last page of a book I didn't remember starting. The key worked on the first try. The door creaked open with a sound that echoed too long and too loud for a house that was supposedly empty. I stepped inside, expecting the thick blanket of dust and mold that usually coats forgotten homes. But the house was clean. I don't mean tidy. I mean maintained. The hardwood floors were swept, the furniture arranged neatly, the windows washed. Even the air, while still tinged with iron and old wood, felt fresh. Someone had been taking care of this place. Recently. I walked through the main hallway slowly, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, trying not to make noise. Every step felt like a trespass. The living room was just as I remembered, bookshelves towering to the ceiling, a fireplace choked with ashes, armchairs worn down at the elbows. A grandfather clock stood in the corner, its pendulum swinging lazily. The sound of its ticking was hypnotic. Familiar. The same rhythm from my childhood nightmares. I dropped my bag by the stairs and made my way to the kitchen, hoping to find electricity. The light switch worked. Overhead, a humming fluorescent bulb flickered to life, revealing pale green cabinets and a yellowed linoleum floor. The sink was empty. No dishes. No evidence of recent meals. And that's when I saw the letter. It lay on the kitchen table like it had been waiting. Next to it, a mason jar filled with rusty nails, and beside that, a battered red pocket knife I vaguely remembered my grandfather always carrying. The envelope was addressed in shaky, deliberate handwriting. Evan, nothing else. No date, no return address, just my name. I opened it with trembling fingers. Evan A. If you're reading this, then I'm dead and the house is yours. There are things here you'll want to understand. Things you deserve to know. Start with the cellar. Use the red key in the clock. Elias. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just that eerie directive. I should have left. Every reasonable part of me, the part that watches horror movies and yells at the screen when the protagonist opens the obviously haunted door, screamed to turn around. Leave. Burn the house if I had to. Walk back to the bus stop and never look back. But I didn't. Not because I was brave. Not because I was curious. I stayed because there was something in that letter I hadn't felt from my grandfather in any of our cold, awkward encounters. Intention. He wanted me here. He chose me. That feeling, more than the promise of answers or inheritance or closure, was enough to make me ignore the thudding in my chest and the sweat collecting at the base of my spine. I walked back into the living room. The grandfather clock's ticking had grown louder. It wasn't my imagination. It had definitely grown louder. I placed a hand against the wood, steadying myself. The clock was colder than it should have been. I opened the face. Inside, nestled behind the pendulum, was a small, rust-colored key. Red, just like the letter said. It looked old. Hand-forged. The kind of thing that would open a pirate's treasure chest or a torture device. In that moment, something shifted in the air. The temperature dropped just slightly. A whisper of a breeze tickled the back of my neck, though all the windows were closed. I turned around slowly. The house was silent again. No creaking, no wind. Just me, the ticking of the clock, and the red key in my palm. The cellar door was in the hallway, under the stairs. I remembered it from childhood, though I don't think we were ever allowed down there. My mother once told me, half joking, that Elias kept his real self in the basement. Back then, I thought she meant booze or maybe a porn stash. Now, I wasn't so sure. The key fit the lock perfectly. With a heavy click, the door creaked open, revealing a steep wooden staircase that vanished into darkness. The scent that rose up was thick and earthy, like moss and rust and something just starting to rot. I flicked the switch on the wall. A single bulb sputtered to life below, casting long shadows across stone walls. I stood there for a long moment, hands still on the doorknob, breath shallow. Then I stepped inside. The clock was hideous. A towering, Baroque monstrosity of dark wood and cracked glass. It loomed in the living room like it owned the place. The kind of antique you'd expect to find in a funeral home or the lobby of a haunted hotel. Its ticking was louder than I remembered, sharp, arrhythmic, almost wet, like something organic was caught in the gears. I stood in front of it for a while, hesitating. I didn't really want to touch it. But the letter, the way my grandfather had written it, like he knew exactly where I'd be standing and what I'd be holding, left me with no choice. I crouched down and pried open the lower panel. Inside, nestled on a bent wire hook behind the pendulum, was a key. Red. Rusted. Not the bright candy red of a modern paint job, but the dull, dried blood hue of something old and long forgotten. The kind of key that feels heavier than it should be. The kind of key you don't want to use. My pulse stuttered. I reached in and took it, flinching slightly as the metal kissed my skin. It was colder than it had any right to be. The second I held it, I felt, watched. Like the house was waiting for me to make a decision. The cellar. Even thinking about it made my throat go dry. I remembered it from when I was a kid, the way my shoes would pause just a little too long at the base of the stairs, how my mom always kept the door locked, even during summer. Once, when I was maybe 6 or 7, I'd heard something down there. Not a crash or a bump, something quieter. Sadder. Sobbing. I remember creeping to the door, ear pressed to the wood. A woman's voice, broken and low. She wasn't crying for help. Just crying. Like she knew no one would come. I'd asked my mom. I still remember the way her face drained of color. "Don't ask questions about this place," she whispered, kneeling beside me. "Just don't." That memory was buried deep, the kind that only comes up when a smell or a sound shakes it loose. But it came back now, whole and heavy, as I stood in front of the cellar door with the red key in my hand. The lock clicked louder than expected, echoing in the hallway like a cough. The door groaned as I pulled it open. The air that came out hit me like a wet slap, cold, metallic, dense with the kind of humidity that sticks to your skin and sinks into your lungs. It smelled like old pennies and damp stone, like time had pooled there and gone stagnant. A single bulb hung from the ceiling at the bottom of the stairs, swinging gently in a breeze I couldn't feel. I flicked the light switch. The bulb flickered. Once, twice. Then it steadied. Shadows danced across the stone walls, long and hunched like they were waiting in line. I stepped down. The stairs groaned under my weight, each step more reluctant than the last. I gripped the banister, which was smoother than it should have been. worn down by years of hands that had no business being down there. The cellar was bigger than I remembered. Tall ceilings, stone walls, shelves of dusty mason jars filled with God knows what. Jars packed with yellowing roots, coiled bones, liquids the color of old bruises. A workbench sat in the corner, tools laid out in eerie precision. Everything down here felt too ordered, too deliberate, like it had been prepared for someone. For me. But none of that scared me. What really scared me, was the door behind the water heater. I saw it the second I turned the corner, tucked into a shallow alcove like it had been shoved out of sight, yet somehow still the focal point of the room. It didn't belong. Made of black wood that drank the light, the door had no handle, no hinges, no visible way to open it. It was smooth, seamless, almost organic. In the center was a perfect circle carved into the surface, about the size of a human palm. The carving was deep, precise, waiting. The moment I saw it, my skin prickled. I knew this was what the key was meant for, but it wouldn't fit. There was no keyhole, no lock, just that circle, like it wanted something else, something living. Next to the door, nailed to the wall with a long iron spike, was a piece of parchment. Not paper, parchment. Old, brittle, the edges curled and brown. 3 sentences, written in what looked like ink, but smelled faintly of copper. Never feed it after dusk. Never speak your name. Never stay more than 30 minutes. That was it. No title, no explanation, no signature. I read it again, and each time, it felt like the meaning slipped further away, like trying to hold water in my hands. I backed away slowly. Whatever was behind that door, whatever my grandfather had locked down here, it wasn't something he expected me to deal with casually. This wasn't an heirloom or a family secret. This was a burden, and now it was mine. I don't remember going back upstairs. I know I did. I woke up in the guest bedroom, fully clothed, boots still on, jacket damp with basement sweat. The air up here was warmer, almost too warm, like the house was trying to comfort me, or contain me. I slept for what felt like hours. Maybe I passed out. Maybe I was dreaming before I even hit the pillow. That night, I heard whispering. First, I thought it was wind. The house made noise, old homes always do. But this was different. It had rhythm, cadence, a voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was speaking to me, saying my name, not shouting, not calling, just whispering it. Evan, over and over. Evan, Evan, like a lullaby. I sat up in bed, heart slamming against my ribs. The whispering stopped the moment I moved. The room was dark, too dark. The lamp on the nightstand clicked uselessly when I tried to turn it on. My phone was dead, even though I'd left it charging. The silence pressed in again, thick and heavy. I listened, and beneath the floorboards, directly beneath me, I heard movement. Not footsteps, not scurrying, something slower, dragging, like fingers against stone. I avoided the cellar for days, told myself I needed time to settle in, told myself I was busy cleaning, unpacking, organizing, though in truth, all I did was pace the halls like a nervous cat and stare at closed doors. Every time I passed the basement, I'd catch myself holding my breath, straining to hear anything behind it. I never heard anything, not at first, but something in the house changed. It wasn't dramatic, not right away. It was the kind of shift you only noticed if you were paying close attention. The kind of change that creeps in slowly, like dusk swallowing daylight. First, it was little things. Doors that closed when I was sure, absolutely sure, I'd left them open. I'd come back into the hallway and find the bathroom door shut, or the upstairs bedroom ajar after locking it the night before. The kind of thing you chalk up to forgetfulness, even though deep down you know you're not mistaken. Then it was the phone. Every night, without fail, my phone died at exactly 3:17 a.m. It didn't matter if it was charging. Didn't matter if I had 90% battery when I fell asleep. At 3:17, the screen went black, and nothing would bring it back until sunrise. I replaced the charger. I even bought a new phone. Same result. 3:17 a.m. dead. It became a ritual. Check the time before bed. Make a note, wake up, Check again. Always blank. A void where connection should be. Like the house was swallowing time. But the worst part wasn't the phones or the doors. It was the scratching. It started softly, so soft I almost didn't register it at first. Just a light scraping behind the walls, near the back hallway. I told myself it was mice. This was an old house. Of course there were mice. That's what old houses have, right? But this wasn't random scurrying. This was rhythmic, measured. Knock, knock, scratch. Knock, knock, scratch. Like knuckles on plaster, then fingers dragging along the beams. Always near that same section of the house, directly above the cellar. I tried ignoring it. Didn't work. Because after the scratching came the voices. I was brushing my teeth one night when I heard the first one. A low hum, barely audible, like someone murmuring in the hallway. Evan. I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. Evan. Again. Closer. I turned off the water. Listened. Silence. I stepped into the hall. Nothing. But the moment I turned my back, I heard it again. Only this time it wasn't a whisper. It was a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. My grandfather's. He wasn't calling me. He was talking to himself in that low, gravelly cadence I remembered from childhood. She doesn't know. None of them know. He'll have to see for himself. The words came from the guest bedroom. But when I opened the door, the room was empty, cold, silent. No tape recorder, no speaker. Just the bed and the dust and the curtain swaying as if someone had just brushed past it. Then the voices changed. The next night I heard Maddie, my ex, laughing from the kitchen. Not just any laugh. The one she did when she thought I was being dumb but lovable. A sound I hadn't heard since before she left. I went downstairs, heart in my throat. Nothing. Just the humming fridge and the red blinking light of the stove. I stood there for a long time, half expecting her to walk in, half hoping. And then, as I turned to leave, I heard my own voice, right behind me, repeating the exact thought in my head. He's losing it, it said with my cadence, my inflection. He's finally losing it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the fireplace. The clock ticked behind me, louder than usual, until I had to cover it with a towel just to think. Sometime after midnight, an idea clawed its way through my panic. If I was losing it, I needed proof. So I set up my phone on the kitchen counter. Full battery, plugged in, camera on. I hit record and left it there. I didn't tell myself what I expected to find. I just needed to see. Something. I went to bed around 1 in the morning, phone still rolling downstairs. My heart wouldn't slow. Every sound made me jump. A creak in the floorboards, a sigh from the walls. I laid there, under the blanket, every light on, listening to the house breathe around me. And then, suddenly, I was asleep. I don't remember drifting off. 1 second I was wide-eyed in the dark, and the next it was morning. Gray light seeped through the curtains. Birds chirped in the woods outside. Oblivious. I ran downstairs. The phone had stopped recording at exactly 3:17 a.m. I sat down with it, hands shaking, and hit play. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. Just empty kitchen silence. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. Occasionally, the light flickered. Then, at 3:17 exactly, I walked into frame. I paused the video. My stomach dropped, because I hadn't left the bed. I knew I hadn't. And yet there I was, on video, walking calmly into the kitchen. Same hoodie, same limp in my right leg, same tired blink I saw in the mirror every morning. I pressed play again. The thing that looked like me walked up to the phone, right up to the lens, and smiled. And I swear to God, it smiled with too many teeth. Not shark-like, not monstrous, just slightly wrong, like a Photoshop filter stretched over a face. The mouth didn't stop where it should. The smile touched the eyes, pulled them upward in a way no human muscles should. Then it leaned in and whispered. The audio spiked into static, like the mic couldn't register whatever it said. Then it turned and walked off screen. I didn't sleep at all that night, and for the first time since arriving, I realized something I'd been trying very, very hard not to admit. The house wasn't haunted. It was inhabited. I don't know why I went back to the black door. Maybe it was the dream I couldn't remember, but woke up shaking from. Maybe it was the noise in the walls, the whispers under the floor, the way my reflection had started blinking out of sync. Maybe I just wanted it to end. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to know the truth. Not the safe truth. Not the kind you can explain away with mold or sleep deprivation. The real truth. The one the house had been nursing like a wound. I prepared, if you could call it that. A flashlight, a hunting knife I found in the shed, and a mirror, small, square, about the size of my palm. Something in me said I'd need to see myself. Really see. The flashlight flickered when I descended the cellar stairs. The air down here always felt wrong, but tonight it was unbearable. The walls seemed closer, the shadows heavier. The smell of rot was stronger, sweet and sour, like spoiled meat and rusted pipes. The black door was waiting, smooth as ever. No hinges, no handle, just the carved circle in the center about the size of a hand. My hand. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Then I raised my palm, slowly, and pressed it into the groove. The wood felt warm, not just warm, alive. There was a soft hiss of air escaping, and then, silently, the door opened. No creak, no resistance, just the soft slide of impossibility. Behind it, a corridor, narrow, curved, made of smooth, slate-colored stone that shimmered faintly in the flashlight beam. It didn't belong to the house. It didn't belong anywhere. The stones were damp, slick with condensation, and the air smelled of mildew and something far worse, something that breathed. The flashlight dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, as if the darkness was pressing against the beam, drinking it. I tapped it. Nothing changed. The light was being eaten alive. Still, I stepped forward. The floor sloped downward. Each footstep echoed faintly behind me, like something was repeating the motion just a second too late. There were no spiders, no rats, no signs of life, just rot and whispers, not in English, not in any language I recognized. They slid along the stone, curling in my ears, each syllable sharp and wet. I couldn't understand them, but I felt them, like they were remembering me. The corridor ended in a circular chamber, a single room, round, windowless, no corners. The geometry felt off, like the walls were moving ever so slightly, breathing in sync with something hidden. That's when I saw them, the photographs, covering the walls from floor to ceiling, edge to edge. Some were black and white, some glossy, some faded. All of them were of me. Photos from childhood. Me at 5, asleep on my grandfather's couch. Me at 12, laughing with a birthday cake. Me last week brushing my teeth, checking the mailbox, standing at the top of the stairs in the middle of the night, blank-eyed and still. One photo was from this morning. Me holding the mirror in the hallway. I staggered back, breathing fast. They weren't just pictures. They were observations, surveillance. In the center of the room was a stone table, round like the chamber itself, lit from above by a single dangling bulb that shouldn't have worked but did. And on the table was a plate, porcelain, impossibly white, and on the plate, an apple, perfect, red, glossy, and breathing, not visibly but audibly. Every few seconds it exhaled, a soft, fleshy whistle, like air escaping lungs. A sound you couldn't unhear once it found your ear. The skin of the apple pulsed slightly, like something inside was trying to push out. Couldn't look away. That's when I heard it. A voice, not in the room but in me. "You're not the first," it said, "but you're the last." The voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. It was internal, blooming behind my eyes like a memory I didn't own. I turned to run, and stopped. Standing in the corridor, blocking my way was me. Not another photograph. Not a dream. Me. Same height. Same eyes. Same limp. Only not. It didn't move like me. It didn't breathe like me. It stood perfectly still, like a wax figure waiting to be animated. And it didn't smile this time. It watched. Not with curiosity. Not with malice. With hunger. Its eyes didn't blink. Its fingers twitched, slightly out of sync, like it was wearing a body not quite sized for it. I backed away. I stepped forward. 1 pace. 2. I lifted the mirror instinctively. Its reflection didn't follow. In the mirror, I saw nothing where it stood. Just empty hallway. My breath caught. Whatever this was, it wasn't me. It was a mask. A thing that had worn me in the night, studied me in photos, whispered through the floor. A thing that needed me to see it. It didn't speak. It just stepped aside, inviting me back down the corridor, toward the apple. I didn't move. Behind me, the apple inhaled. I ran. I don't remember how. One moment, I was standing in that round stone room, facing a thing that wore my face like a borrowed coat. The next, I was clawing at the cellar stairs, the flashlight long gone, blood pounding in my ears, a scream tearing out of my throat, high and animal, something I'd never heard from myself before. Behind me, the corridor pulsed like a lung. And over it all, I heard the laughter. My laughter. Not just echoing. Following. It was still laughing when I slammed the cellar door shut behind me, bolted it, nailed it shut, and shoved a bookcase in front of it. It didn't make me feel safer. Not even for a second. But doing something felt better than the truth I was starting to understand. I took the red key out of the clock and lit it on fire. Watched it melt, spit sparks, and die. It didn't matter, because I was already part of the house now. The rules, my grandfather's last warning, weren't there to protect me from what was down there. They were there to protect me from what would happen if I broke them. And I had. I broke all 3. The first time I tried to leave, I made it 20 miles before I realized the gas station I'd pulled into was the same one I'd passed half an hour earlier. Same cracked ice machine. Same cashier. Same crow staring down from the power line like it was watching me. I checked the GPS, static. No signal. When I turned the car around and drove the other direction, I ended up back in town. Not hours later, minutes. Like time itself was folding over me. I took a bus next. Paid cash. Kept my hood up. Watched trees blur past in a direction that felt right. The bus broke down 10 miles out. Engine failure. Driver didn't even look surprised. When I asked where the nearest mechanic was, he just pointed back toward town and said, "You'll make it home before dark." I did. I always do. Now, I don't even try. Not really. I booked hotels in other cities. Slept on couches. Rented rooms from strangers. And every time, no matter what, no matter where, I wake up back in the same house. Same creaky bed. Same rotting air. The photographs are gone from the walls, but I can feel them watching. New ones. Hidden. Cataloging everything. I don't know how long it's been. Days blur. Seasons change outside the windows, but not inside me. Sometimes I find food in the kitchen. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes there are footprints in the dust that don't belong to me. And every night, every single night, at exactly 3:17 a.m. I hear it. The creak of the upstairs hallway. A single step, then another. Measured, deliberate, like it's letting me know it's there. Not rushing, just waiting. It never comes into the room. Not yet, but I hear the door handle move sometimes. Just a gentle rattle. A test, like it's checking to see if I'm done writing. If I'm finished pretending this is still my story. Because here's the thing. It knows my name now. That was the last rule, wasn't it? Never speak your name. And I did. Not aloud, but in my thoughts. When I wrote it. When I remembered it too clearly down there in the dark. That's all it needed. So I'm writing this down now not to explain. Not to warn. Just to pass the time. To keep the door closed for one more night. Because I can hear it moving again. The steps are closer. And it only has to say my name once. Just once. Before it stops watching. And starts wearing me again.